In the opening of David Lynch's Blue Velvet, we get a dreamy and idyllic view of an anachronistic suburbia, complete with white picket fences, blue skies, and a red rose. As the camera moves through this wholesome American neighborhood, it eventually reveals a grotesque underbelly of roaches in the soil. This scene is a key example of Lynch's most common visual allegory, the deconstruction of Americana and American idealism to reveal a disturbing and perverted reality. Throughout Lynch's films and visual art, he is telling us to take a deeper look at what's normal and see it for what it is. In his films, David Lynch consistently critiques and subverts American idealism and culture through allegorical devices, postmodern critique, and experimental narrative technique. I'll be doing a textual analysis of his films to better understand this. Allegories. In his revolutionary debut feature film Eraserhead, Lynch creates an expressionist vision of industrial America that subverts traditional ideas of working-class life. Gray images of factories and warehouses line the backgrounds, complemented by a mechanical ambient soundscape. Lynch goes after home life in Eraserhead as well, as the main character, Henry, is no Hollywood hero. With a ridiculous haircut and an over-anxious demeanor, Henry is Lynch's way of challenging traditional male roles. Unlike a typical Hollywood male lead, Henry is terrified of being a father. Eraserhead can be read as an expressionist interpretation of the fears of fatherhood and masculinity, both hallmarks of American culture. In Blue Velvet, Lynch does the opposite. He positions small-town American life in the context of the idyllic, conservative, and wholesome 1950s that eventually unravels as Jeffrey descends into a perverted criminal underground. In the film, Lynch uses a robin as a symbol of purity, in that it eats the grotesque insects that plague the dreamy perfection of Lumberton. In the final scene, when the robin appears and the happy ending is sealed, there is an atmosphere of artificiality. The bird is obviously some kind of robot. What Lynch is suggesting then in this simple symbol is the fake nature of what we believe is perfect, and our tendencies to pretend that things are normal when they are really not. Lynch would later revisit the twisted nature of idyllic suburbia in the Twin Peaks series, using the murder of prom queen Laura Palmer as another example of the dark underbelly of the idyllic American experience. Postmodern critique. Blue Velvet gets its title from a 50s pop song originally recorded by Tony Bennett, later covered and repopularized by Bobby Vinton in 1963. Vinton's cover is the version used in the film. The song is one of the central pillars of the film's postmodern view of 80s America. For Lynch, it appears that the 50s and early 60s pop music represents a nostalgic and innocent perspective on romance, if not to a fault. The song Blue Velvet tells the sentimental story of a one-night stand that is mistaken for romance by the singer, who laments this perfect moment. The film's usage of the song repurposes it to seemingly critique its masculine perspective. Jeffrey seems to be acting on notions of adventure that drive him to investigate Dorothy's life. Jeffrey's upbringing with a pop culture of songs like Blue Velvet promoting such a false masculine fantasy has led him into danger. Equally, the use of 50s and 60s pop music again recalls the wholesome American life that Lynch wants to critique. By juxtaposing these songs with moments of lust and perversion, Lynch is able to associate the wholesome with the disturbing. The idea of a velvet dress itself is now read as a much more sexual image in Vinton's song. This is Lynch's postmodern critique. In Mulholland Drive, Lynch sets his sights on the fantasies of Hollywood. In the equally twisted and surreal narrative, Lynch undercuts the traditional idea of a young actress moving to Hollywood and becoming a star with masturbatory visions of lusting after fame. Experimental narrative techniques. Mulholland Drive often questions the audience's perception of reality. Just as Lynch is critiquing the traditional Hollywood success story, he is twisting all of Hollywood's filmic conventions. The film is overall split into scenes that are pure fantasy and scenes that are actually happening. The first half of the film plays with the viewer's diegetic perspective, showing Diane's masturbatory fantasy world without giving away that it is fantasy until the end of the film. Lynch hints at this along the way, with the scene of Betty's parents driving away ironically smiling as a moment of pure surrealism. One of Lynch's most powerful moves in the film is how he manages to question the boundaries of the film's reality and the viewer's reality. The scene at Winky's Diner of a man recounting his dream eventually becomes the dream itself, blurring boundaries between dreams and the film's reality. Similarly, the scene in which Betty practices for her audition is cleverly written to blend the narrative of what's happening in Mulholland Drive and what's happening in the film that Betty is auditioning for. Lynch tears down expectations of reality, being that it's already a fantasy, but within that fantasy there is also a script for a film that has its own reality. Adding these levels allows Lynch to manipulate the viewer, much like the Hollywood standards he wants to critique. Lynch questions the nature of film itself then. How real is the unreal? This is Lynch's subversion of the traditional Hollywood narrative, not only to look at film ontologically, but also to remind viewers that Hollywood sells fantasy in a box labeled reality. Lynch would continue to blur narratives in Inland Empire, another film about Hollywood. In Inland Empire, Laura Dern's character again blends the realities of both the film and the film her character is working on, and often it becomes hard to tell one from the other. David Lynch's career has been characterized by his fascination with subverting traditional American ideas and culture through allegorical devices, postmodern critique, and experimental narratives. Lynch has always been interested in pulling away the layers of our perspective to reveal truth, and most of the time, the truth isn't pretty. Whether it be the suburban life of conservative small-town America, or the toxic pop music, or Hollywood's effect on our view of reality, Lynch has made himself through defying expectations, and his films are proof of that.